we started the actual recording. I apologize, didn't start it at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
All right, go ahead.
All right, you want to start over, Martin?
Sure. Yeah. In my thoughts about this, number one, I don't think that this is out of character with the neighborhood, given other signs on institutional uses in the neighborhood. Secondly, the sign on the side of the building is not very visible from the street, so I can absolutely understand why they would be requesting a sign on the front of the building and why a sign on the side of the building does them no practical good. In that same vein, because it's not significantly visible from the street, I don't think it has a strong negative visual impact on the neighborhood. I also think, given the fact that this is an application being considered for an institutional use, I do also think that it's not a significant precedent that we might be setting for them. And the two signs in total, the square footage is substantially lower than the amount of square footage that they would be allowed if they only had one sign on the building. They could have a significantly larger sign on the front of the building, which could go to the fact that that might not be in as much character with the neighborhood. But I don't think with the renderings of the plan they have put forward that it's a significant deviation from the community character.
I guess I don't disagree with anything that you've offered, Martin. I guess my question to Louis is, if they were to remove the sign from the side and put it on the front, they wouldn't require a variance at all, correct? It's the fact that they would have two wall signs on the building that is at issue.
Correct. Yep. The variance is for the extra sign. Even if they had both signs, it would be under the total signage allowed. It's the fact that it's a second sign rather than the size of it.
So I guess, is there a desire on the part of the applicant to have both signs? Like, I think that if I had seen the cost of moving the sign, that had been like this astronomical cost to move the sign, then I think that I would kind of lean towards Martin's stance on this. But I think that if it's possible to remove that sign and repair it and then put it on the front of the building, which is where they want it, I think that's what I would probably recommend or suggest, unless there was like some reason why that was not possible.
I think the only reason they brought up that why they were not excited by that idea was the potential for damage from the letters above the doorway.
Okay.
What are you thinking, Adriana?
That's what I remember them saying as well, that like they didn't want to remove the sign that was currently there because of like repairing it underneath would never be like, it would still affect somewhat the integrity of the building. I guess they're saying like it may leave damage to the building, which I mean, I'm not 100% sure that how strong that argument is. I mean,
yeah,
not compelling.
You can't patch things up and fix things up. I don't know. I can't find the numbers you were discussing, Martin. I found the letter, the email that Louis showed us, but I don't see the breakdown of the.
Sure. Yep. My browser just disappeared. Let me hit my back button. If we go to the document, I call it the document vault, but if you go to the case file,
yep.
So BZA, there's case files. This one's 266.
Yeah.
All the way at the bottom is what's called sign relocation estimate. It's the final PDF. So it begins with master application. Then they have elevations, proposed signage. The very last document in order is supplemental information.
Is this online?
Below that.
Is it in the Dropbox?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. I call it Dropbox. Yep. Very last item. Sign relocation estimate.
Let's see.
The address, if you're using the address field to search up the case, is 1020 Madison Avenue.
Yeah, I got the.
Mm-hmm.
That.
So does
Finding a
the
creative way to share my screen, but
you
I
just
can
have
do
to
that.
ask Louis to do it, but don't worry about it. He's showing it to us anyway.
Yeah.
So
I was going to take a picture and put it back, my phone back.
there you go. Good idea, Martin. So I look at the case, and the variance is to have twice the number of signs that are allowed in the district, not to have a square footage. So the square footage being smaller than they could put up is irrelevant. I agree with you that putting a sign on the front of the building doesn't change the community character. And likely having two signs on it doesn't necessarily change the community character, because they seem to have that on a number of buildings which may or may not have been permitted in the past. As we know, the sign variance was slightly different in the past, but also a lot of people just did the stuff. And so if we can't find permits, then we don't know for a fact whether it was done lawfully or not. Definitely they created their own problem, and they admit that. The alternatives considered are, one of the alternatives, as Denard pointed out, is for the exact same cost, we don't have to give them a variance. And that's where I land on this, because I don't see why they need two signs. And that's their argument, that they want two signs is not compelling. If it's the same cost, there's no burden to them, really. It would be the same burden if we gave them the additional sign. And I can't see giving a variance on that basis. So that's where I end up.
So I guess I think I'm kind of where you are, Richard, but I guess it leaves open, I guess they could, before the next meeting, submit what it would cost to properly patch repair the removal of the letters. Like, not just do, a patch job, but really completely repair them. Like, if they had to move the letters, how do they safeguard completely the building for the future? If that increases the cost substantially, then maybe that's a different conversation, right?
So you didn't interpret that email where it said that they would repair the building?
Well, I don't know, like, are they saying that that's for, like, minimal repair, and that repair they're concerned about it leaving, affecting the integrity of the building? I guess that's what I'm wondering, is that quote for that removal and repair still, was that option, or do they still have concerns about damage to the building?
I think it's, while I disagree with Richard on this, I think that that estimate does include patching and painting. I don't think the financial aspect is that burdensome on them. Whether it's up to the college's standard of how it's repaired, I don't think they made a case for that. They just simply provided what the sign company said would cost to move the sign.
Well, there was no statement by the guy who came into the college saying that they don't trust the sign company to do a good job. They just didn't like the idea of having more holes in the building. If it were a new building, that might be a more reasonable argument to me, but it's not a new building. Those are all historic buildings. They've had holes put into them many times over the amount of time the building has been around, and they're going to continue to do that. I mean, if the college is hiring substandard people to do repairs on their buildings, that's, again, not a reason for giving a variance, at least in my mind. So I think we're at 2 and 2, or are you a no also, Denard?
I would be a no on it. So, or should I say, I'm going to agree with what you're saying. I think we're saying something similar. I think that it's possible without a huge burden to just move the sign, and you wouldn't even need the variance at all. I'm not a structural engineer, so I don't know if it's going to cause the building to collapse, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah. All right. Well, so one yes, you're a no, Adriana, or you're a maybe?
I'm a no.
You're a no?
Unless at the meeting they could show that, like I said, unless there's something that changes the dollar amount that makes it burdensome, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, then let's tentatively book it as a no. If we'll ask if they want to do any presentation at the public hearing, and if they're convincing, then we can adjust our vote then if necessary. But it looks like it's going to end up as a no. And I don't know where Serena would go, but even if so, we'd have 3-2, and it would be a no as a matter of law. Okay. Do you want to move on to the next thing, Louis?
Okay, so the next case is 536 Central Avenue. And just to clarify, from the prior hearing, right before the hearing, the applicant had reached out and advised us that they were withdrawing their variance for both sides and are only putting forth the variance request now for the transparency on Central Avenue. Their transparency on Manning was 46%, so they were requesting for the 4% variance there, but they were able to, I believe, meet the requirements. So they are only looking for the 0% transparency on Central Avenue now. And the requirement there is 50%. So we have some new information, but not a lot. The applicant was asked to, as far as character of the neighborhood, the applicant didn't provide any evidence of structures with similar opacity, but that it did indicate that the new development, that the expansion of the structure would be in line with new development in the area. So the applicant went over the design considerations when the board asked about how they arrived at the interior design layout and whether or not another layout could have been considered. The applicant went over the design and indicated that the way that they have their system of parking and loading and freezer and cooling, that essentially predetermined the location of those systems and as such would predetermine the layout and could not be changed. Which resulted in the need for the variance. I think that was all the information for that.
Okay. What do folks feel about that one?
You want me to go first again?
Sure. You're not shy.
So I think by them putting in, number one, from them putting in the faux windows, they're trying to comply with the spirit of the regulation to put in windows on that frontage. I think it does make the building more attractive. Considering the fact that the building now has no presence whatsoever to Central Avenue, I think it's worth considering that they're trying to achieve what the zoning code and what those form-based guidance is intended to provide are more attractive buildings now they face the street. This one is obviously on a corner lot, so they have two frontages. Second, I think the uniqueness of a convenience store layout and the need to have the refrigeration units on one side of the building and storage on another presents that there's no need or public interest in viewing that area. Even if they were able to comply and have windows, there would be nothing to view in there. And I think that that's not a space that's occupied. So if the intent of that requirement is to provide eyes on a building in case something is going awry, that's not something that's going to be happening in those particular spaces. And finally, I think there is a significant weight to the argument that relaying out the store is an extraordinary expense, especially given the fact that these stores are pretty much designed to function as a kind of a standard layout. I think we've all been to Stewart's and know how most of them, especially the newer stores, most convenience stores in that matter, are laid out and where they put things like storage and like freezer cases, where in a store that is longer than it is wide, it makes sense to have them on both the sides of the building. So I think in the spirit of the requirement, the application has tried to meet the requirements in the comprehensive plan and in the form-based code district. I think it's a difficult thing for the applicant to meet the requirement, and I think they made their case as far as from the community character aspect that this will be a significant improvement.
I tend to agree with Martin's assessment of the case. I think the fact that they're willing to put the 4 windows in for appearance sake when there's not really a function for them, I think is something that is worth considering. And then also, I think that the main point, I think Martin made this point at the last meeting, is it's a safety thing. And so in this particular instance, if you did have the transparent windows, you wouldn't be looking into the store and see, and like, which would allow like law enforcement to see if anything was going on in there. And so I don't see the point of actually requiring the transparent windows if you're looking into, I think it was like a storage area, which is what would be there. So I don't have an issue with this application either.
Any thoughts, Adriana?
I don't have an issue either. I think, yeah, we heard from the neighborhood, we heard from the applicant. They came back. They also changed their application. They're trying, on the other side, central on Manning. They're meeting the requirement there, and I think they indeed they explain clearly why they don't have another option. Like they can't put the windows. They just it doesn't work. So.
Yeah, and I guess I agree. I mean, they came in with a substantial set of variances. They have amended their application so as to remove the need to get more than one variance. In essence, they're trying to present before us the least variance possible out of their original application. So I think that's a good thing, and it meets our requirement under law. Trying to make the form-based code appearance work, I think, is good too. I mean, the form-based code is an important policy of the city of Albany. I think we'll have to draft the opinion relatively carefully to make sure this doesn't open a door for many other buildings to depart from the form-based code requirements, just saying, oh, we can't operate our business if we do that, or, whatever reason, but we'll just have to narrow that a little bit to make sure it's okay. But I think this is, I would vote yes on this also. So, okay. Do you want to do a motion for this one at the public hearing, Adriana?
Sure.
Okay. And do you want to make a motion, or actually that's not fair. You want to make a motion for the no and Denard for the other building at the next meeting, assuming that they don't bring in something really convincing at the last minute and put it before us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to seeing like new information, but if nothing more is presented, I will gladly move to vote no on that one.
Okay, cool. That's it, right, Luis?
Yep. We just also have the 36 Judson Street nuisance complaint as well, still on the pending item list.
Yeah, we're not going to take any action on the pending list today. That one I know is still the subject of some communication between the city, the owner, the attorneys, and all that kind of stuff. So there's no reason to act at this point.
Okay, yeah, that would.
I got a question. Maybe this isn't something that can be answered now. I know the Common Council voted to remove the potential for the planning board to provide a waiver during the development review process for what's to be considered small variances. I know that there are 2 waivers in the past 3 years that were granted. I'm just, as a personal note, curious as to what those waivers are, because they could be coming, similar requests could be coming to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And it would just be interesting to know the types of waivers that they have provided in the past and what extra might be coming across our desk.
Yeah, we'll see more waivers. I'm sorry, we'll see more variances. But I think they presented when the council member spoke at the planning board meeting about his legislation and asked them to come to some kind of an agreement. They talked about the 2 waivers that were granted, but I confess I don't remember what it was. And Luis, you weren't there. That was Zach, right?
I was there actually. Yeah, Zach.
You were, okay.
Yeah.
You remember what they were?
One of them was parking space width. It was a waiver to reduce the parking space width from 12 feet to 10 feet, so as to allow the applicant to be able to fit more parking spaces and meet the design requirements for parking and loading. And I can't remember the other one. I'm not sure what the other one was, but I can get that information for you pretty easily. The intent basically, or the after, the effect would be that we would probably get more variances for minor design changes.
Well, on the basis of the last year, we get 2 more variance cases, so not that many.
Yeah, it's not a substantial increase. I'm just curious as to what they were and the potential for increasing that. To me, when you're doing the review, hello Mason. When you're reviewing an entire project like that, to me, it made sense to have those sorts of things brought up in the guidance of the planning board. But now that it's in our, if it's going to be in our wheelhouse, just curious as to what those types of things were.
Yeah, and I think the point that you made on Facebook, Martin, just to bring this back up, loop back to social media, that we're not going to look at those design elements because that's not what we do when we analyze.
We're very narrow.
Yeah.
Right.
That may or may not be a loss to the way that the projects are considered. But we'll see. That was very cute, Martin.
Well, I didn't pay him to do that. He's been very sweet since he's been going to summer camp. I think it is it's nice to not spend time with mom and dad.
Yeah, it makes that time more valuable.
We're a very happy household. Yes.
Good. Okay. You have anything else for us, Luis?
Nope, that's all the cases.
Okay. In that case, thank you all as always. I'll reach out and talk to Serena in between, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Okay.
You good?
Oh,
All right.
Wait.
actually, I might miss the next meeting, but I'll email Lewis.
Okay.
Oh, no, I can make it. Okay.
False alarm. Thanks, Council. Have a good evening, everybody.
All right, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Say bye.
Bye.
Bye, Nathan.